Hey, welcome! Today we're diving into a literary form that's part confession, part performance, and honestly all psychology. It's the dramatic monologue. Think of it like this. It's a poem that puts you right there in the room with a character at a make-or-break moment, and it makes you the judge of what's being said and, more importantly, what's being hidden.
I mean, really think about it. You're in a conversation, right? But only one person is talking. They're telling you their version of events, trying to get you on their side. And you're left to piece together the actual truth from their tone, their little excuses, and everything they conveniently leave out. Well, that feeling of being a detective in a one-sided conversation, that is the essence of the dramatic monologue.
Okay, first things first, let's clear up something people get mixed up all the time. A dramatic monologue is not a soliloquy. In a soliloquy, like when a character in a play is on stage all by themselves, they're basically just speaking their inner thoughts out loud for us, the audience, to hear. But with a dramatic monologue, the speaker is talking to a specific, silent person who is right there with them in the scene. So it's not just thinking out loud, it's a deliberate speech, a performance for an audience of one.
So to boil it all down, a dramatic monologue is a poem where a single character, a totally distinct personality, definitely not the poet, is speaking to a silent listener. And in the course of that one-sided chat, they accidentally spill everything about themselves, their biases, their weaknesses, what really drives them. It's basically a psychological portrait painted with words.
To really get how this whole thing works, we've got to break it down into its three key parts. Think of it as the recipe for some serious psychological drama.
All right, so ingredient number one, you've got the single speaker, a clear-cut character with their own voice. Second, you have the silent listener. Their presence is huge because it shapes why the speaker is even talking. Are they trying to persuade them, intimidate them, confess something? And then you have the third and honestly the most important ingredient, the self-revelation. This is where the magic happens. The speaker is trying so hard to present this perfect image of themselves, but through their own words, the mask slips, and we see who they really are underneath.
Now, to see how all these pieces come together, we have to look at the undisputed master of this form, the poet Robert Browning, and what might be his most chilling creation ever.
So Robert Browning pretty much perfected this whole thing back in the Victorian era. He was absolutely fascinated by the darker corners of the human mind, obsession, hypocrisy, the way power can corrupt someone. His monologues are these incredible little masterpieces of psychological suspense, and none of them do it better than his famous poem, My Last Duchess.
Okay, so picture this. We're in Renaissance Italy. Our speaker is this powerful duke, and he's negotiating his next marriage with a representative, an envoy. In the middle of their talk, the duke pulls back a curtain to show off a portrait of his previous wife, his last duchess, and then he starts to talk. And as the duke talks, his true self just pours out. He complains that his wife was, well, too friendly, that she smiled at everyone. He tries to frame it as an issue of proper behavior, but what we're really hearing is this terrifying possessive jealousy. And then he drops the line, he gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. Whoa. It's a confession of murder, hidden in plain sight. He couldn't control her in life, so now he possesses her completely in death, as an object he can literally hide behind a curtain. You see that gap, that massive canyon between what the Duke thinks he's saying about his own importance and what he's actually showing us about his cruelty? That is the heart of the poem. It's a literary device called dramatic irony, and it's the engine that makes the dramatic monologue run. We, the listeners, get the horrible truth that the speaker is either completely blind to or is desperately trying to cover up.
Okay, this all seems pretty complicated, right? So you might be wondering, why would a poet go to all this trouble? Why not just tell a story straight up? Well, the answer is all about what this unique form lets a writer do.
The real power here is that intense focus on character instead of plot. It lets writers dig into really thorny, morally gray subjects without wagging a finger. And it creates this incredible sense of immediacy, like you're actually there, eavesdropping on this critical moment. But I think its greatest strength is that it turns you, the reader, into a psychological detective, forcing you to piece together the truth from a web of carefully chosen and often deceptive words.
And this just shows how incredibly versatile the form is. On one hand, you've got Robert Browning using it to dissect obsession and cruelty. But then you have his contemporary, Alfred Lord Tennyson, who uses the exact same structure in his poem Ulysses to explore a hero's deep, noble thoughts on aging, adventure, and what it means to live a full life. It's the same tool, but it's used to build completely different psychological worlds.
So we've talked about the speaker and the poet. But there's one more person in this whole equation who is absolutely essential to making it all work. And that person is you.
Here's the thing. A dramatic monologue isn't finished when the poet writes it. It's really a partnership. The speaker gives you the words, but you are the one who has to do the interpreting. You're the one who has to question their motives, to spot all the little contradictions and to dig out the truth that's buried deep underneath their performance.
Which brings us to one last big question. The speaker controls the entire conversation. They have all the words. But by seeing through their act, by uncovering the truth they're trying to hide, who really holds the power here? The speaker or the listener who silently understands it all?